So, whatever happened to that incredible 1982 franchise-altering classic sci-fi film Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan? Let's find out.
Movies, music, and monsters.
Hey my friends, Dan Monroe here talking about movies, music, and monsters. Oh man, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, one of those films that absolutely went down in cinematic history as not only a film that, some claim, literally saved the entire Star Trek theatrical franchise, but also issued in a new era for the original Star Trek cast, and holy Jiminy Christmas, the background on how this film got made and literally almost didn't is one of the most bizarre I've ever heard. Really quite unbelievable. This second entry into the Star Trek theatrical universe was indeed truly something special to behold over 40 years ago and still today. So grab your Genesis device with your favorite mind-altering ear slug and a bucket of stale popcorn, and let's dive in.
Revenge is a dish that is best served cold.
Huge thanks once again to expert model maker James Small for providing a ton of really cool photos, and of course director and producer David C. Fine, the man responsible for the 4K release of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the director's edition, for supplying a ton of incredible information about this film that I now get to share with all of you guys. One thing I always loved about this film is that to me it emphasized the exact representation of what I personally always thought Star Trek was best at. Captain Kirk arrogantly and confidently staring at the view screen, attempting to outthink the genius mind of some incredible space entity, space chess, drama. I mean, don't get me wrong, Star Trek: The Motion Picture was unbelievable on its own, and the J.J. Abrams Trek movies were fun, I guess, but certainly not what I would consider true Star Trek. Now, let's get one thing straight right out of the gate. I like Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Maybe not so much when I was a kid, finding it a little slow after having my world rocked with the overly exciting release of Star Wars, but I do like it quite a bit, and believe me, this movie made a whole ton of profit at the box office, something the naysayers really don't talk too much about. In fact, Star Trek: The Motion Picture made more money, adjusted for inflation, than any other Star Trek film to date. Having said that, the audience reaction back in the day was, I guess I'd have to say, lackluster, to say the least, as far as the average non-Trekkie moviegoer was concerned anyway, and when it came time to think about a sequel, Gene Roddenberry, the guy who started it all, wrote his very own script. It was really very bizarre. The crew of the Enterprise travel back in time to fix the timeline after the Klingons use the Guardian of Forever to prevent the Federation from ever existing, preventing the assassination of JFK, basically a sequel to the episode City on the Edge of Forever, with Joan Collins reprising her original role and, get this, Mr. Spock himself being the JFK assassin behind the grassy knoll?
Holy Jiminy Christmas, what the heck?
I know, right? Well, I can certainly understand why the executives at Paramount immediately dismissed this script as being just a little too much, not to mention the fact that the studio pretty much blamed Roddenberry personally for the slow pace and the high budget of the first film. So, the powers that be at Paramount basically removed Gene Roddenberry from anything that had to do with this Star Trek sequel, kicked upstairs, as William Shatner recalled, to the ceremonial position of executive producer and script consultant, basically worthless, meaningless, honorary titles.
So basically, they beamed him the heck out of there.
As fast as they possibly could, now bringing in television producer Harve Bennett as producer seems like a bit of an odd decision, bringing in a guy who was not only not a Star Trek fan, but had never seen a single episode of the original series, but that's what they did. Harve Bennett, who found Star Trek the Motion Picture to be, and I quote, pretty boring, was asked if he could make a better movie for under $40 million, and Mr. Bennett famously replied, where I come from, I could make 5 movies for that.
That's it. You're hired.
So, after watching all the original TV shows, Bennett concluded that one thing Star Trek the Motion Picture was missing was a full-fledged, downright nasty old villain, and decided that the character of Khan from the TV show Space Seed would be a perfect fit for this new Star Trek installment. Harve Bennett also correctly realized that Star Trek at its core was not about starships traveling through space, but more importantly, the relationships of the 3 main characters, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and I certainly have to absolutely agree with that. Fun fact, the original title of this film was not Wrath of Khan, but The Vengeance of Khan, but they decided to change it because Vengeance of Khan sounded way too much like Revenge of the Jedi. So, in 1980, Bennett wrote his first version of the script titled War of the Generations, in which Kirk investigates a rebellion on a far-off world, which is led by his own estranged son, David, by the way. Khan, of course, is pulling all the strings behind the curtain regarding the theft of the Federation's ultimate weapon, the Death Star. I mean the Omega system, which was later on changed from a weapon of destruction to a weapon of creation called the Genesis device. Then, seemingly out of the blue, the entire production got something that it very badly needed.
Nicholas Meyer.
Oh, you better believe it, pal. A friend of producer Harve Bennett's, who, oddly enough, had also never seen a single episode of Star Trek, began working with literally 5 different versions of the script, adapting them down into one final version with a Horatio Hornblower in space type of motif, maintaining the concept of the human condition foremost for the Star Trek characters right up front, adding a little bit of humor and, in his own words, bringing a healthy disrespect to Star Trek itself. He and Bennett also gave the Star Trek world a bit more of a military persona rather than that of just exploring peacemakers, something, again, that Gene Roddenberry absolutely hated. And keep in mind, at this point, the production was literally right down to the wire with no script whatsoever and filming to begin in literally 12 days. So, in a very untraditional Hollywood fashion, Nicholas Meyer decided to write the entire official draft of the screenplay himself, completely uncredited and unpaid.
You've got to be freaking kidding me.
No, I'm serious. The version of the film that you watch today is the script by Nicholas Meyer, which gave him great credibility with not only the studio executives, but also the cast, who absolutely loved this script. Well, that is almost everybody except, of course,
William Shatner.
Bingo, my friend. But after several meetings with Nicholas Meyer, some alterations were made to make damn sure that William Shatner's character was always up front and center. The green light was finally given, and Wrath of Khan was out of space dock and on its way. Fun fact, DeForest Kelley actually turned down playing Dr. McCoy completely, wanting nothing whatsoever to do with the sequel. That is, until he read the script by Nicholas Meyer. Damn it, Jim, I'm in. Walter Koenig Chekhov was also more than thrilled this time around because he actually got something to do, including that wonderful scene down on Ceti Alpha 5 where he gets to confront Khan himself.
Warning, warning, Chekhov wasn't in the original TV show Space Seed. Therefore, how could Khan possibly know who he is?
Well, maybe he was on the ship, but just wasn't assigned to the bridge crew yet. Okay.
Fine, let's just go with that.
The return of Ricardo Montalban as Khan was not only an incredible addition to the story, but also his warm personality and extreme professionalism on set made him an absolute joy to work with, and yes, that was his real chest, completing all of his scenes in a mere 12 days.
I was doing Fantasy Island. Harvey Bennett, producer, offered me this role of Khan, which was based on a character I had done many years ago when it was a television series. I began getting acquainted with the character, which I had to bring from way back. So what I have to do now is bring that character and then make it passionate because he's blaming Kurt for the death of his wife, whom he loved passionately. And all of a sudden I began to read, and I was convinced by that time that Mr. Rourke had disappeared, and that indeed I had become Khan.
Kirstie Alley auditioned for the role of Saavik and nailed the audition with her wonderful impersonation of a female Spock, mainly because she was already an enormous Star Trek fan and, believe it or not, used to literally dream about being Spock's daughter when she was a kid. You know, the Starship Enterprise had a whole ton of really cool stuff on board, but one thing I bet they wish they had that they didn't, especially Uhura at the communications station, where monitoring all those subspace frequencies is just crucial, is her very own pair of Raycon everyday headphones. I already told you guys I never endorse a product that I don't personally use myself, and for the past year, I've been using my Raycon everyday earbuds literally every night after dinner as I listen to my favorite podcasts, and these Raycon everyday headphones are the absolute perfect addition, your perfect partner for the gym, at work, phone calls, premium audio that goes literally anywhere you go with a 40-hour battery life, quick charge function, 360-degree immersive surround sound, and best of all, they are super comfortable to wear. The everyday headphones come with active noise cancellation, which is really kind of hard to find at a reasonable price, but not with Raycon, which starts at just about half the price of other premium audio brands. I personally love it because I can listen to my favorite music or YouTube videos without having to hear the traffic outside my window, or worse, my wife telling me it's time to take out the trash. And the savings don't end there. Simply go to buyraycon.com/Dan Monroe 20, where all headphones are 20% off. You heard me right, 20% off. Simply click the link in the description and start hearing all your favorite music and podcasts clearer, with less noise, comfortable, and super affordable. And now, back to Wrath of Khan. Fun fact, in one of the cutscenes from the film, we learn that Saavik is actually half Romulan. Oddly enough, Leonard Nimoy was also not interested in returning as Spock. He literally just wrote a book called I Am Not Spock, and pretty much believed that Star Trek was over and that Paramount was just beating a dead horse, but he eventually was enticed back into the role when he was offered a fantastic death scene, essentially promising him that the Spock character would die once and for all, and he'd never have to play this character again.
Ha ha, little did he know.
And of course, even though Leonard Nimoy absolutely loved this part of the storyline, Gene Roddenberry, of course, absolutely hated it, so much, in fact, that Roddenberry intentionally leaked the information about Spock's death at a Star Trek convention, and whoo-hoo, I gotta tell you, the fans were pissed, and so was Paramount, but it's very interesting. They knew it was Gene Roddenberry because each one of the scripts that was given to these executives had specific markings in them, so if someone leaked a script, they knew exactly who leaked it, and of course, it was Roddenberry. Interesting, though, due to this leak, Nicholas Meyer came up with the brilliant idea to do a fake Spock death right at the beginning of the film during the famous Kobayashi-Maru test to make the audience think, oh, that's what it was all about. He's not really dead. Everybody just relaxed in their seats until, of course, the last scene of the movie, a brilliant move that worked out absolutely perfectly.
We knew that there would be a great deal of controversy, and we knew that we had to walk a very fine line. We don't know that Spock dies. It's part and parcel of the angle that this film takes, and I think it's a good hook.
I don't think any of us could have predicted what the impact would be, but we did take a chance. There's been a lot of interest in the subject, and a lot of people have written about it and talked about it. Where are we going from here? It seems as though we're going somewhere. Spock is quoted in the picture as saying there are always possibilities, and I think that's the feeling you come out with when you've seen the movie.
After the extreme success and positive reaction to this film, Leonard Nimoy really started regretting his decision about killing off Spock, which is why he himself did the final narration of the film, along with the now famous pre-death interaction between Spock and Bones.
Remember.
An ending that, by the way, Nicholas Meyer absolutely hated. He felt they were cheating the audience into thinking Spock was gone, but whoops, not really. He'll be back. He was so mad, in fact, that he absolutely refused to have anything to do whatsoever with Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. The budget for Wrath of Khan was originally only $8.5 million, but after the producers were impressed by the first 2 weeks of footage, they raised the budget to just over $12 million, with principal photography beginning in November of 1981 and ending only a short 2 months later in January of 1982. George Lucas's Industrial Light and Magic was brought on board to complete the special effects, which were just awesome, by the way, including the incredibly early CGI sequence of the terraforming planet with the Genesis device. Many people point to this specific sequence as the birth of CGI, but keep in mind, the Death Star plan video sequence at the end of Star Wars was also computer-generated images, CGI, so lines are open, you decide. Super cool. The Regula 1 research laboratory in Wrath of Khan is the same model which was used as the orbital office complex in the motion picture. They just flipped it upside down. The music in this movie was nothing short of astronomical. The production team originally wanting Jerry Goldsmith to do the score, but they simply could not afford him this time around, so Harve Bennett, after listening to tons and tons of audition tapes, eventually handed down the monumental task of bringing Wrath of Khan to life musically to James Horner, a pretty much unknown composer at the time, but went on to do incredible scores in his Hollywood career, including Field of Dreams, Apollo 13, Titanic, Braveheart, Star Trek III, and so many more. We could literally be here all day. Fun, strange fact, in the original theatrical cut of Wrath of Khan, at the end, when Kirk beams back up to the Enterprise and leaves the transporter room asking, hey, what still works around here? It cuts to a shot of the Enterprise near the bottom of the planet. However, in the original director's cut, a new scene was inserted of Kirk and Spock going up a ladder with a very cool line. Kirk says to Spock something like, "That young man is my son," and Spock says, "Fascinating." However, and here's the really interesting part, when Wrath of Khan got its current 4K director's cut release, the scene going up the ladder is still there, but the line was removed. Well, the answer is really pretty simple, according to Nicholas Meyer himself, who stated, "I always liked the shot, but I never really cared for the dialogue." And then we have to talk about Khan's little boy.
Wait, what?
You heard me right. Khan had a kid.
You've been smoking the wacky tobacco.
No, I'm serious. In a cut scene from the film, Captain Terrell and Chekhov notice a child while exploring the ruins of the Botany Bay. This baby would later reappear at the end of the film when Khan activates the Genesis device. His son, being a kid, I guess is drawn towards it because it just has shiny lights and looks cool, and the kid accidentally detonates it, killing everybody on the Reliant, including his dad. No one is really sure exactly why the scene was cut. It's never been seen since, but I assume that the executives at Paramount probably thought that the death of a child was just a little too dark, even for this film. Who knows? Khan's ship, the Reliant, was so freaking cool. All those incredible shots were actually specifically designed to look like slow-moving underwater submarine battles. So effective, classic Star Trek, and this is super cool. The design of the Reliant actually came about quite by accident. Originally designed with the warp nacelles pointed up, similar to the Enterprise, but when Harv Bennett finally saw the blueprints, he accidentally looked at the blueprints upside down and approved the design. Gene Roddenberry continued to be a real pain in the warp drive to both Nicholas Meyer and Harv Bennett, fighting them on almost every single issue. One of the biggest and most ridiculous was the space slug coming out of Chekhov's ear. Roddenberry argued constantly that Kirk would never have shot and killed the alien, that he would have let it live and studied it for the benefit of mankind or something.
But it killed many of Khan's people, including his beloved wife.
That's what I say. Nevertheless, The Wrath of Khan was released to theaters on June 4th, 1982, and pulled in a staggering $78 million in the U.S. and almost $100 million worldwide. All of that on a $13 million budget. Not too shabby for a little sci-fi flick back in the early 1980s, I can tell you that. Not to mention the incredible money it made on home video, RCA video disc, VHS, Betamax in 1983, DVD in 2000, a 2-disc Director's Edition DVD in 2002, the original theatrical cut released on Blu-ray in 2009, a gorgeous director's cut of the film on Blu-ray in 2016, and finally, a 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray released. Fun fact, the 70mm prints of this film left the number 2 off the title, which read Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, not Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan. Why? Who knows? But it's definitely a wonderful tidbit to know the next time you're engaged in a rousing game of Trivial Pursuit. Okay, but what about all the super cool costumes and props from the film? Well, in November 2024, we saw a Wrath of Khan sick bay bio bed panel go up for auction at Julian's, which was also used in Star Trek The Next Generation, by the way, selling for over $4,500. A Federation Engineering outfit sold again by Julian's in 2024, a little over $3,000. This is amazing. Back in 2019, William Shatner's actual Admiral James T. Kirk Starfleet Command jacket from the film, estimated to reach upwards of $100,000. Believe it or not, didn't even sell. I find that really super hard to believe, but that's the way it went down. But check this out. Ricardo Montalban's desert protective helmet and shoulder wrap from the film. Unbelievable that this thing still exists, selling back in 2011 for over $38,000. Khan's signature left-hand glove from the film sold back in 2022 for over $21,000. Ricardo Montalban's screen-used tunic, wrist communicator, and Starfleet necklace sold again in a heritage auction in 2014 for an incredible $54,000. Ever wonder what happened to the space slug that fell out of Chekhov's ear? Well, back in 2013, somebody paid over $7,000 for it. This is amazing. Here's a piece of the Enterprise screen-matched, battle-damaged hull model used in the production of the film that's sold at a prop store auction for over £21,000. And here's the big one back in 2023. William Shatner's Starfleet field uniform sold at a heritage auction for an astounding $150,000. And as far as the original filming models of the Enterprise and the Reliant, well, the Enterprise itself, the enormous model that was used in Star Trek 1 through 6, was auctioned off by Christie's in 2006 and sold for a staggering $284,000. It currently sits in the lobby of a rocket company called Blue Origin, owned by Jeff Bezos. Now, prior to the auction where the Enterprise sold, the model was sent to Foundation Imaging along with the original Klingon cruiser to have CGI models perfectly made from the original prop. And check out this unbelievable freaking footage. Literally unboxing this incredible original Enterprise model for the digital scans. So freaking amazing and unbelievably fun to see. Such an amazing piece of original Star Trek history. And as far as the Reliant, it sold back in 2006, again at a Christie's auction for $60,000 and is currently in France as part of the collection of the Starfix Museum. Now, I know I've touched on this before, but I can't stress the importance of this main point. Yes, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan was an unbelievable motion picture in its own right, but remember, it only exists because of the magnificence and cinematic brilliance of Star Trek, the motion picture. I highly recommend and encourage everyone to go back and take another look at this film, specifically the 2022 Director's Edition in stunningly gorgeous 4K Ultra HD, the newly restored definitive version with not only the amazing film, but tons of incredible bonus features. Star Trek like you've never seen it before. Do yourself a favor, guys. Go back again and check it out. Links to the 4K Director's Edition are in the description. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan was not only an incredible cinematic movie-going experience, but more importantly, an expansion of the greatness that came before with Star Trek the Motion Picture, literally laying the solid groundwork for all the following Star Trek movies, each with their own unique blend of science fiction storytelling and mythology, like Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, and so many more. We could be here all day, but that, my friends, is the topic of another video. I really hope you guys enjoyed that deep dive into Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, and if you did and you like this kind of stuff, please consider subscribing to the channel. I've got a whole bunch of new videos coming up really soon that I know you guys are just gonna dig. And please feel free to stop back anytime as we together continue the conversation on movies, music, and monsters.
Movies, music, and monsters.